Hello and welcome to another episode of Sales and Pepper podcast. Here's Dominic, your podcast host, and today I have a special guest here, someone I'm following already 2 years on LinkedIn. His name is Thibaut Souyris. I hope I spelled it right. And happy to have you here today, Thibaut, and welcome to Sales and Pepper podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Dominic, for having me. You spelled the name properly, so both the first and last name, so congrats. That was a good job.
Very good. Thibaut, I'm always starting with a little introduction. So maybe for those who don't know you, a few words about yourself. Who are you and what are you doing?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Thibaut Souyris. I'm originally coming from France and Switzerland. And what I do is I simply train and coach tech sales people to start more conversations and book more meetings. And I also help them basically once they have booked these meetings, help them run the meeting, understand how they can understand their customers' problem and prospects' problem, and how they can position the solution so they can close bigger deals faster. And so I do it through coaching, training, mostly online. There's a lot of online content too. I have a podcast. I'm an advisor for a company like Tolstoy, for example, that does video prospecting. So everything around B2B tech sales,
Great tool.
I really like that. And yeah, thank you. I know you're using it, so it's a cool
Yeah.
tool actually. So everything, yeah, that is really related to tech sales is kind of my jam, and that's what I do. And on the side, I just like enjoying motorcycling with my wife, tasting wine from south of France, and enjoying time with my kid.
Nice. And you just told me you're sitting in Mexico right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Enjoying
mean,
the winter time.
for winter, absolutely.
Great. So, what's super interesting, Thibaut, is that actually when I started following you on LinkedIn, I think you were actually posting a lot of content for the Sales Advantage community you built back then.
Mhm.
Now you have also sales labs, if I see it right. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more. I think it was kind of a community at the beginning, right? Or was it always sales consulting right from the beginning?
So from the beginning, I started doing consulting. So the community part is something I've done. It was a project from last year, not super active anymore. Building a community, like a paid community, is really time consuming and challenging. So it's not really a project that I'm working on anymore. But basically, I started doing what I'm doing with Sales Labs by doing some consulting for startups. So I was in a job as an account executive in 2018, I think, and it was paid well and everything, but I really hated working for others in the end. And so I said, okay, I'm just gonna leave the company and do my own stuff. So I found the first customer, then a second, and at the time I was always doing consulting, so I was doing pretty much consulting on everything and anything. And my kind of a sentence I found really interesting was like, the best way for being to be successful in consulting is to find a problem and become a part of it. So it was basically what I was doing. I was finding problems, trying to solve it and everything. But what I found is that you find a problem. For example, someone wants to implement a new CRM, and then you're like, oh, I can help because I know about sales process and everything. And then you realize that to implement a new CRM, you need to be really good at plenty of things and be an expert, for example, at Salesforce or HubSpot, which I wasn't. I knew a bit about that, but I was having a very general um, kind of skill set on things around sales. And so what I found is with
Yeah.
time, I would be able to increase the price I would charge per hour or per service by focusing on something. And really, what it is now is outbound prospecting, mostly using LinkedIn and creative outreach tools. So that's what I'm doing right now, really focusing on how can you book more meetings with whatever technology appears. And yeah, that's my focus right now.
What I really like about your content, Thibaut, is that you're having kind of a system, right? So it's not, I think that's what a lot of SDRs and also young salespeople struggling with is the question like, how do I book actually a consistent amount of meetings? How do I fill up my pipeline consistently? And I think what's super, super important in sales. I mean, I think the sentence everyone knows is sales is a numbers game. So I think what I really like about your content, that you're really breaking it down, and it's a super simple system actually what you're providing, and but it's in the end it's a numbers game, right? So can you tell us a little bit about why are your coachings and also like your frameworks are actually helping people to book more meetings? What are you doing differently than maybe other teams are doing?
Yeah. So I like what you said about systems. So actually, I have a question for you. So you've been an SDR, right?
Uh, not really an SDR. So when I started my sales career, it's like over 10 years ago, and it was more like a call center agent, right?
Yeah.
So I was doing 100 calls a day. It, I think it doesn't really have something to do with the SDR role for today, but I was calling a lot. So there was no LinkedIn. There was just the phone and me.
Yeah. Okay. So, but you were doing some kind of outbound prospecting in that case with the phone, and so what is the system for you? Like what what does it consist of a system?
I mean, for me, for example, you're on your LinkedIn header, for example, you're saying that your SDRs booking more meetings, so they have a 38% reply rate and this 27% meeting rate on LinkedIn. So I think that's first point is, do you know your own KPIs? Do you know what is important to actually have a look on to be successful, or you're just calling clients and
Yeah.
hoping that you're booking some meetings? And a system for me is also, do you know how is your funnel looking like, right? So how
Mhm.
many prospects do you actually need to contact? What's your conversion rate? So also calculate lighting backwards to know if I need 10 meetings, that's what I need to do. And that's
Yeah.
for me, that's a system.
Absolutely. And the thing is, often people think they when they need to have a system that is something that's going to be really challenging to put in place, that there's going to be a lot of tools, a lot of kind of best practices, standard operating procedures, and everything. Whereas the system, for basically what I do, my job, is like I have plenty of systems that are running all the time that rely, on input. And so there's basically, for example, I'm running a weekly newsletter. I'm doing 5 posts a week on LinkedIn, and that's kind of the core of my strategy to kind of create content and get some customers, for example. And for prospecting is very similar. So basically, what I'm doing, let's say, different is that I kind of break down the whole prospecting process into something that is very easy to understand and very practical. So whenever you actually want to go and sell something, the first thing you need to do is to book meetings. And when someone hires you as an SDR, very often they hire you to book outbound meetings, meaning you don't really gonna receive anything, from the marketing, whatever. You're just gonna have to go and find it. And so for me, I'm thinking if I have this problem and I want to go and book meetings with people, I need to first understand who are these people, what is their job title, in what type of company they're working with, to make sure I'm working with the right type of people. And then when this is done, I need to kind of be able to say, okay, where are these people hanging out? What are the problems they're having? And then once I have this clear idea, I need to focus on a quantity. So if I want to book 10 meetings, what does that mean in terms of activity or net new prospects I need to contact every day? And so once I have this, I need to build a system to create a habit. So on days where I don't really want to prospect, when it's, I don't know, snowy or it's in the middle of winter and you just don't really feel like it, I need to have a system that helps me to actually get it, put the net new amount of prospects I need to contact in my sequence and work on that. And so for me, it's really like I train people on all these different steps, which are all, taken separately are very simple, but all together it creates a really big mess. And that's something I love doing with every aspects of my life, where I have different systems. For cooking, for example, I like cooking French food, or maybe I really like cooking, like you could say, yeah, specific French food, but also fusion and everything. And there's always the system, in there. So it's really just about taking something complicated, chopping it up in small pieces, and then focusing on one piece at a time.
That's a great advice. And actually, because you also mentioned it beforehand, I think what's different today in the SDR role or in the outbound game is that there's a lot of different tools popping up, and of course you can make use of it. So compared to what I was doing 10 years ago, I think the whole job changed a lot. Um, how would you say, what kind of tools should someone who's doing outbound, doesn't matter if it's an SDR or an AE, so what toolings should they use to be successful? And then maybe a second question, what would you say, what's the difference between outbounding as an SDR and outbounding as an AE?
Okay, so for the tools, so one thing that is really important is to understand that there's so many tools we can use. What really matters is first to have either a CRM or a sequencer, something where you can put like a digital trace of who you've contacted, when you contacted, what you sent. So for me, I have a Notion dashboard for that. I've created this Notion dashboard, which is just a very simple kind of superpowered Excel spreadsheet where I just use it because I want to show everyone that you don't need to have outreach, sales loft, or any of these really cool tools to actually go and be successful with that. Obviously, it's going to be much better if you have them and you work in a team. But basically, when you contact someone, you have to be able to say, okay, I contacted this person at this time. Next time I'm going to contact them is, I don't know, in 2 days based on your sequence. And this is what I said. That's what matters first. Once you have this idea of basically having a task list, typically that's going to be helping you with prospecting, what you need is, for example, for research, you need to be able to get some data, some insights about your prospects. And recently, it's been 2 weeks I've been using it. I use Chat GPT for that. And that really is really, really important to actually find what are the typical prospect problems, what they think about. And once this is actually done, a really important tool will be a way to stand out. So you can think of Vidyard, of Tolstoy, these kind of video prospecting tools, LinkedIn voice notes, GIFs, with Vidu, for example. So there's plenty of different tools you can use, but really, how do you stand out? And then you can say, there's internet and all the things, like LinkedIn, email, phone that are important. But that's basically the kind of three categories of tool. First one is structure, system. How do you make sure that you contact people and you have a trace of it? Second one is research. And then third one is reaching out to people. So that would be three categories of tools that are super important in my opinion. What was
How
your
about
second?
the second question? Sorry, it was a little bit of a mix up, but the second question was, how does the job of not the job differentiating, but how does the outbound game differentiating between an SDR and an AE? Because I see in my team at least we have eight AEs right now. Of course, they're struggling a little bit with time management because they
Yeah.
have to do their demos, they have to send out contracts, and there's not that much of time for doing outbound. So what would you recommend people who actually don't have much time for doing it? So what's where would you put the focus for these two different groups?
Yeah. So first, I would say if you don't have time for outbound prospecting as an A, you're doing something wrong. Meaning that you are putting your results, your outcome in the hands of someone else, meaning in marketing, your SDR or whatever. And humans are fallible, and so what can happen is that at some point you may not have the amount of meetings you typically got from marketing or from your SDR. So one thing that you can do, a very precise thing you can do, is to first accept that you have to go and prospect every day. I know when you become an AE, let's say you were an SDR for a year, 2 years, you become an AE, you're like, fine, I won't need to prospect anymore. The truth is, I believe that for a while. For me, I've been in sales for now since I'm 15 years old. And I always thought I would not, I could actually get rid of prospecting and focus on something else at some point. And the truth, the thing I've learned is that as long as you're in sales, you have to go and keep prospecting. So one thing you can do for that is first accept that, then understand how many people you need to contact every day to reach your targets. So if you want to book 10 meetings, maybe you need to add 5 new prospects to your sequence every day. And then you need to protect your time for that. So what I call time blocking. So for me, what I do is 8 to 9 in the morning every day. So from Monday to Friday is like a time block where no one can book me. I don't take any meetings. I just focus on outbound prospecting. And so that's the thing where I'm running a business, I'm doing plenty of different things. So I also could say I'm too busy to prospect, but I'm not. So I go 8 to 9, I do my follow ups, find 5 new prospects, add them to my sequence, and then I'm done. So that's what I would really recommend for AEs or people who are really busy is make sure that you protect your time, protect it from your customers, from distraction, from your managers, from your colleagues, from everything, and you say, hey, this is part of my job. This is really important for my job. So that's something it's a non-negotiable for me. I'm gonna work and protect my time with time blocks. That's something I recommend. And I would say for SDRs, add more time blocks. And the good thing is, as an SDR, is that if you really understand the messaging and you start, having a good sequence where it works well, you're going to find that you're able to work 2 hours a day, reach your targets, and then the 6 hours that are you're supposed to work in the rest, you can do other things, work more. You can. That's the good thing with being an SDR, is that once you understood how it works and you really protect your time, then you build some really good habits to become an AE and put more stuff in your day.
It's an amazing, it's amazing hint you gave. I think I also looking a lot of time management strategies and all that stuff, and I
Mhm.
think one of the one quote what really stood out to me and what really gave me a different perspective is a quote which said, we like, because people always tend to say I don't have time for that, right?
Mhm.
And what I was reading was, if you shift this sentence and make it, it's not a priority, instead of I don't have time, it changed something in your mind, because then in the end we all have 24 hours, and that's what you say, you're a business owner and you still prospect 1 hour every day, but if you're
Yeah,
not doing it, it's just not a priority for you. So you need to,
exactly.
you are the one who's responsible for your time, so you need to time block or whatever. And also really a big fan of the eat the frog strategy you just described. So do the first thing in the morning, do the least fun activity. So if you don't like prospecting, make a time block just
Yeah.
in the beginning of the morning, um, and then it's done. So then you also feel better in the afternoon
Yeah.
if you say, okay, that was my top 3 priority tasks for the day, and I could just check them, and I'm done. And then everything else is a bonus, right? So I really I'm also a big fan of this kind of working style.
Yeah, and Dominic, there's two things I hate, and that I have to do every day. I really hate doing that. First one is my workout, 10 minutes of high intensity interval training and prospecting. So I make my living teaching people how to prospect, but let's be honest, it's not fun. I hate doing it, but I still have to do it. So that's the first thing I do in the morning, because once it's done, it's done. And then, I can focus on fun things. And everything and it appears to be so much fun compared to prospecting once I've done it. So that's really something I do. And one hack I can give to people is one thing I do is I love coffee in the morning, and what I love with coffee is when it's warm. So what I do is that I do my coffee while it's actually brewing. I go and do all my follow-ups, and I say no coffee before all the follow-ups are done. And so what I'm doing is follow-ups. They're really simple because I don't need to think too much. So I go super fast because
That's
I want to
great.
drink my coffee warm. And often, I just go super fast. I go in the flow zone where I'm like, okay, I'm just on the roll. So I keep doing it. And often, I just end my prospecting block and now I drink my coffee. So I'm now
That's
drinking my first
amazing.
coffee that I'm done with the horrible task of my day.
Yeah, really good tip. I think that's a little bit of the 1% method. I don't know if you have read the book. It's also like, how can you increase your outcomes by changing 1%? And it's always, and also the Atomic Habits book. There's also like, how can you actually implement these kind of habits and make small changes to actually do what you want to do? And that's actually a really good tip.
Yeah, I never read these books, but I should
You
actually.
you should. They're really good. Thibaut, you also mentioned Chat GPT, and I think everyone on LinkedIn already heard about it. If not, I think maybe you can just tell us a little bit about what is Chat GPT and how did it change your
Hmm.
work in the last few weeks?
Sure. So I guess ChatGPT, from what it is, I think it's an artificial intelligence. Whatever that means, I don't know exactly. So I'm not super technical or whatever, but just the way I use it for sales is very simple. So I'm working on different kind of use case and everything, but what I found so far works really well with ChatGPT is to actually use it to find prospects problems. So one thing that is super important for me is to focus on the problems of my prospects so I can tease their interest. Say, hey, if you have this specific problem, I may have something for you. So if you look at 2023, very often what's happening is that VPs of sales, for example, they're going to have our head of sales development. They're going to have targets, like either sales targets or opportunity targets that are going to be pretty high. And then people will say, okay, you have to do double the amount from last year with half the people. So they're like, okay, how am I going to do that? And it translates into crazy, like a whole amount of symptoms, which are, for example, your SDRs are quitting because they have too much pressure. There's less reply rates. There's a lot more emails sent, but a lot less kind of replies. So you have plenty of symptoms you can have. But the problem is whenever you are prospecting, often it's hard to find these symptoms. So one thing that works really well with Chat GPT is to go and ask it to act like someone. So for me, I say act like the VP of sales of Pleo, for example, and list your top 3 initiatives for 2023. And so what it's going to do is going to come back with some, I don't know exactly how, but some initiatives for, like 2023. And often the initiative will be quite generic, or, they're going to be a bit adapted to the world of finance or CFOs and everything. But, it's going to be a bit generic. So what I like to do is to say, okay, now list 3 symptoms of the challenges that you actually mentioned. And then it lists something that are a bit more precise. And so what I do is I'm going to do a screen capture of this, drop it into the direct message on LinkedIn from my prospect or the email, and say, what do you think? Is it familiar? And so what I found is that it creates a lot of conversations. Sometimes they're like, yeah, that's what I'm dealing with. Sometimes they're like, no, it's actually completely off. What do you want? But still I have the conversation going. So for me, that's how I use
That's
it right
smart.
now. And it's one use case. Yeah.
So you're actually, so I get it right, you're actually doing a screenshot of what the ChatGPT is providing you and
Yeah.
asking prospects what they think about it, if it's correct or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
That that's super smart.
And yeah, I mean, it's good. It drives conversation. So some people are like, yeah, okay, that's really relevant. And then say, okay, if 3.3 is that relevant for you, I have something, I can send you a quick resource to help you there. And so it's the good thing is that the resource I can also ask ChatGPT to create an outline for the resource, how to solve XYZ problem. And sometimes they're like, oh, it's completely off. And one guy just answered, oh yeah, it's pretty generic and not super on point. But how is he working with other people? So you see, I'm able to get this conversation started, which is often the biggest challenge now people are having is that no one picks up the phone, no one replies to their email, no one does anything. So you're sending emails, you're sending a lot of cold outreach, no replies. And so that's really like the first part of the problem that you're solving is getting conversation started, getting replies, and standing out. And I found that so far this tactic works really well.
What's your experience like at you just mentioned like a lot of people doesn't really reply to LinkedIn emails, I would say also LinkedIn connection requests and emails. How can you stand out? Because you mentioned it already twice. What's the way to really stand out?
So there's different ways, but so there's 2 things: there's creativity and relevance. So creativity often is done through LinkedIn voice notes, videos, basically just something that stands out and create a pattern interrupt where the prospect often they receive like text messages, like everything emails, and it's just like super busy, crowded. So if you stand out by shortening your emails or your text message, and basically just like adding a new media, like video, voice, so people are curious to know what's behind that. Relevance is often done through finding triggers. So, public piece of information showing that someone has a problem or an interest in speaking with you can be they like to post about a specific problem, or they visited your profile, for example. And with ChatGPT, what you can do is actually go and hook people and say, hey, do you have these 3 problems? Because if you do, I have a potential solution for you. And often, if you have a clear problem about hiring or reaching your targets, and someone says, hey, do you have this specific problem on reaching your targets? I may have a solution for you. You're going to be more prompt to reply because you're curious to know what's behind that. I call that the Netflix effect, where if you're binge watching a series on Netflix, is because they end up with cliffhangers, meaning that they're creating tension and drama at the end of a season or an episode. And then basically they cut the episode. And so what you want to do is resolve the tension so you keep watching. Same here. You say, hey, you have this problem? You do? I have something for you. Just reply and I'll tell you more. People tend to reply more because they're just curious. So that's how you can stand out.
That's interesting. How would you say, like, because you already mentioned ChatGPT is something super, like, kind of new thing, right? It changed the way you're working right now. And I think what I see on LinkedIn a lot is not only for sales but also for marketing, for finance people. They're all looking into this new opportunity and thinking of how can I use this new tool, this new AI, to actually make my job more simple. And I think also a little bit of discussions going around, if in the future just the Chat GPT and AIs will have a conversation and nobody's actually doing the text work themselves again. So I think what, for me personally, I would say it's just a shift a little bit of, like you mentioned it, to get inspiration, to use it as a tool, and it will not replace an SDR. It will never replace an AE. What let's say not never, but at least in the next few decades, I think it will just be one more tool we can use. What's your opinion? Like, how will this new technology maybe also going forward for a few years? How will the job maybe will be different?
So I think it's gonna be it's hard to kind of see where the future is going, but a lot of people are often scared, about losing their jobs, and I can understand that. So the thing is, it's just gonna be like, there was one thing at some point, is that there was a job. It was really a long time ago, where basically what you had to do, I don't remember what's the name, but is you went to the streets and then you were lighting the lights of the street, which were gas lights. So basically, you turn on the
Yeah.
gas and you light them. And basically, when electricity came, this job disappeared. So what I think is going to happen is you have some jobs that are really low quality, where it's just about sending the same boring emails. That's going to disappear. But the AI and basically the way it's kind of like being used by everyone now, I think is gonna it's just a big shift, where we have a tool that now is gonna change and make a lot of job irrelevant. But reaching out to prospects in a human way, where you can catch their attention, is gonna be something that's always gonna be important. So I think the job of the SDR will change drastically by learning how to use these tools to kind of find resources, be creative. And I think it's going towards this kind of like personal brand, where everyone's kind of running their own shop as freelancers that are super free. I think we're going into this kind of world, where people who know how to be creative, find tactics, and try different things will succeed, and people who actually need to follow a process and who are not super creative or don't really know how to use these tools will have really hard time. So I think it's just about seeing it just like as the calculator. So when the calculator appeared, people were super scared that students would not, would always cheat with the calculator. And so I think it's the same with ChatGPT. It's going to be super useful, but it's not going to replace everything as we think about it.
Absolutely, I agree. Thibaut, we are already half an hour talking again. I think time is always flying, and I could actually talk longer with you, but I think we're a little bit short on time. So maybe my last question I'm always asking at the end of each episode is, what's your personal tip to our audience? What's your favorite tool, framework, book, what you can recommend people to actually be more successful in what they're doing?
So what I would say is that so you can go, if the audience is around sales, you can just hang out on LinkedIn. I would say that's really a good place. If you're not hanging out there, is first go and check people, like 10 people you really appreciate in terms of content they're doing, and just go follow them, hit the bell where you're able to see their posts, and start engaging with them. That's one thing you can do. You're going to learn a lot of things. You're going to discover new kind of worlds. So that's what I would recommend. If you want some specific resources, for example, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I have a podcast also called the B2B Sales Podcast. So listen to some podcasts like the one of Dominique Sales and Pepper. I think that works really well. And it's just really about being curious. Find some time to kind of explore, listen, see what's out there. But one thing is super important is protect your time, as we discussed, and make sure you actually do the job, because really, being successful in this job is just about taking action, doing things, and not just listening to experts or people speaking, and really just taking action.
Great advice. So thank you for your time, Thibaut. It was nice talking to you, and I hope to see you someday also at some events again. So
Yeah.
have a nice time in Mexico with your family, and talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for having me, Dominique.
Bye bye. This was another episode of Sales and Pepper podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, I'm really happy if you follow me on Anchor, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. And feel free to share the episode with your friends or colleagues. Thank you.